I've got 5 really cool plants to show you guys today in September's favorites video. So sit back, relax and enjoy. What is up, my planting people? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. The first plant that I'm really excited to show you guys this month is this one right here, my Philodendron HETEROCRASPEDON. Now, how impressive is this leaf? And this isn't the one that I'm excited about. Oh, no, it's this one. It is this tiny little leaf. Now, guys, there's a backstory behind this plant. When I got this, it was a top cutting of this gorgeous Philodendron HETEROCRASPEDON. It was this single leaf and it had a huge grow point just at the top. Now I had this plant acclimating in a huge Ziploc bag and it seemed to be doing okay. It wasn't dying back. The leaf stayed kind of solid. It was doing really well. And then eventually I kind of noticed that, you know what, this growth point, and with my knowledge of Philodendron, by now something should have happened. I mean, it has a leaf, it should be rooted. It's been a couple of weeks. So let's see what's happening. So I decided to take it out of the pond that it was in at the time. And I noticed that it was rotting. Like the stem had rotted maybe 1 centimeter or 2. Now, luckily I had, you know, the seller who sold this to me gave me lots of stem to play with. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's quickly do something about this. So what I did is I went ahead, I chopped off that rotted stem, and I had 2 nodes on this plant. I had one, there's quite a long stem, so let's say about 10 centimeters, maybe 15. And there were 2 nodes on each of those. There was one at the bottom, which after chopping it, there was only a little bit of space between that bottom node and the top and the end of the stem. So I had that one, and then there was a closer one just below this where this leaf actually is. So I said to myself, I could either try to take a risk and cut off that bottom node and try to root that separately as just a node cutting, or I could plant them both in just a long container. And as you can tell, this is the option that I went for. So I decided to put them both in here. So you can see actually there are some roots coming out of the bottom of the pot. So all along here, you can see there's some roots, and there are also some roots coming from the top of the pot. If you can see, there's some just along here. There's a nice juicy one over here as well, so you can see that. So luckily this plant has gone ahead and is rooted at both of those nodal points. So I was really excited to see that, especially when I took a risk planting this thing in a closed container like this. But you know what? I follow some brilliant people. Jasmine Lowe, if you don't follow, go ahead and follow her. She has a knack for growing plants in glass containers. And you know what? It looks gorgeous. It looks really cool. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and try it out. So I found this really cool vase. I drilled a hole, which took way too long because I don't have a diamond bit drill, just so I can do some water changes if needed. And boom, about a month later, we've now got this gorgeous little leaf, but more importantly, we've also got a grow point over here. Only time will tell how long it's going to take before I get another one of these beautiful, huge, gigantic leaves, but you know, time is something that I have at the moment. But this is the first plant, the Philodendron HETEROCRASPEDON. It wasn't too long ago that I posted a short on this plant right here. This is my Anthurium PELTIGERUM, and look at it now. We've got a whole new leaf on this bad boy, a whole new leaf. I'm so happy, and it's now hardened off. It did come out a little bit funky, I must say. You could tell that they tend to have a more of a sort of symmetrical, smooth sort of shape to them, but this one is a bit more concave than, you know, it's a bit gnarly, it's a bit weird looking, but I think that's just because it's a new space, it's a new environment, so the plant, you know, it tends to do that. I did actually have to kind of help this leaf point towards the light because it was growing up against my wall just behind me, and the leaf was growing facing the wall, and I was like, okay, that can't happen. So I had to sort of move the leaf so that it was facing the right direction, and eventually did. So I think that might have something to do with the way that it grew. But I'm really glad to see that we have this new leaf. And the reason for that is this plant is notorious for being a slow grower, a very slow rooter as well. And I was lucky when I got this plant. It was rooted, albeit it wasn't like root bound when I got it, but it had some roots. And when I moved it from moss, I'll show you guys, into pon, I did lose just a handful of roots, and I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but now it's actually starting to root. I can see some new root tips emerging just at various points along the pond, and I'm really glad to see that. I find that this plant is not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I don't know if I can say that. The reason for that is I think this is a plant that does require, you know, that constant humidity around its roots, and I typically like to grow all of my Anthurium in pond, so that always helps. And I think because of that, I find the journey just to be that, you know, that little bit easier for me. And I did put a bit of moss along the top, as you can see over here. And I've had so much success with Anthuriums when I put moss around the base just to maintain that humidity at that point over there. So I've done that. I haven't covered this one up because it seems to remain quite moist, but I'm really chuffed to see this plant growing and doing well. Already I can see the next growth point. Okay, I thought I could say that it's growing a little bit, but you can hardly see it. So maybe in another couple of months I might get another leaf. I don't know. I'll keep you guys posted. This is the first leaf I've had on this plant, and I haven't had this plant for too long, so I can't really tell you how quick or how slowly it grows, which is why it made it into this month's favorites video, because yeah, why not? Just look at that. I'm super happy to see this plant really filling out its pot and quickly becoming one of my favorite Anthuriums to look at. But yes, that is it. This is the Anthurium PELTIGERUM. So this plant has been on a few favorite videos this year and is back again, and it is the Crystosperma johnsonii. And guys, look at the size of this monster. Oh my goodness, let me just show you what we're working with. This is my hand, and it's only like just the size of one of the lobes. So it's like 3 handfuls. The last leaf you guys would have seen was this one, and it was quite large. I was quite impressed. But guys, look at that. Oh my goodness. When I first got this plant, the leaves, now these are a bit battered and bruised, but they were about this sort of size, very tiny. And it sized up so quickly, like literally went from like something like this to maybe again like another leaf. Then they went to this, something like this, and then boom, after that, it just blew up. It just blew up and it just kept going. And it's only in a 4-inch pot. The last time I repotted this plant, it came from just a 2-inch pot. Really tiny little thing, and it had grown so large. And then I decided to up pot it, and then when I did that, the leaves started to really grow and size up. So I think I'm gonna have to repot this again. I might wait until the summer actually, or until the spring, because I'm running out of space. I think it's a little bit too cool in my living room at the moment, because even this new leaf is already starting to crisp at the ends. So I had to take it out of my grow tent because there is literally no space for it. The leaf was like, oh, went in my eye. The leaf was bending and contorting because it's hitting the top shelf. So I had to move it out. And I have it under a grow light just here, just on the floor. But I think it's a little bit too cold. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move it into like a warmer room, maybe into my bedroom where it can get sunlight, but mainly remain warm and still have some of that high-ish humidity. My room stabilizes at around 60%. So hopefully that should be okay. But I think the main thing is the warmth, keeping it nice and warm. So I'm going to do that today. But yeah, this has been an absolute joy to grow. Honestly, I didn't think when I first got this plant, I thought it was cool, but I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do now. It's like, it's really different. Like when I first got it, I thought the leaves would sort of grow downwards, kind of like a syngonium or an Anthurium with the lobes pointed upwards. But it grows really differently with the lobes pointed downwards. You know, it has some spikes on the petiole over here, which is quite cool. I mean, they're not super sharp, So you can kind of grab them, you know, gently and not hurt yourself. But yeah, it's just really cool. And also, I don't know if you guys saw, but it's popping at the bottom. There's lots of new plants. So all of these are new plants. This was one over here, but it's sort of dried up. And there's some more coming up around the base. So you never know, maybe next year, this whole plant, this whole pot might be really full. And it might be like a bush of Cryptosperma johnsonii as opposed to one huge one. And I think that'd be quite cool. And it would take on a completely different and new characteristic. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, without further ado, guys, this is it. This is the Cryptosperma johnsonii. Let me know what you think of this one in the comment area below. So the next plant is just behind me. I'm gonna have to move away just to let you take in the glory, which is the Anthurium Magnificum cross regale, the Mad Rag. This is a new leaf, another monster, another beauty. I'm going to take you in for a closer look. Come. So this right here was the last leaf you would have seen. It was by far the biggest leaf on this plant, and it measured, got my trusty measuring tape over here, it measured, so when it finally hardened off, it was 57 centimeters long. Now that was very, very large compared to the other leaf before. You can see very, very tiny. I think there might be another one back here actually somewhere hiding away. But it was around that sort of size. And we're talking, you know, what we're talking. We're talking 40 centimeters in length versus nearly 60. And then this one came out just recently. You can see it's still hardening off. You know, it's still got that sort of that lighter lime green color. Now, I was hoping that this would be a lot larger, a complete beast, maybe measuring around 70 centimeters based on how large this plant is growing, based on how large this plant and how quickly it was sizing up. But we did manage to get just a couple of centimeters longer. So that one was 57. This one is 50, just over 58 centimeters. Which is, you know, I was a little bit disappointed, but I think that's partially my fault because when I had this plant growing, it was on the floor and it was really starting to hit the other plants. And I didn't want the leaf to get too damaged. So I moved it around, and in that process of moving it from this side of the desk to this side of the desk, I did manage to just damage some of the leaves. You can see it. There's a hole. Oh, just ripped that. So there's a hole here now, and there's some damage over here. And there's a tiny little hole here, which I'm not sure where that came from. But yeah, so I find when you do that, when you damage the leaf, it does slow down the growth or make the leaf mature or harden off a little bit quicker than you would expect. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm still very, very happy about it. And also we have an inflorescence back there. We've got another one which has expired now. I didn't pollinate it. I just pollinated maybe just a bottom centimeter of it, and that's not enough to maintain that growth. But I have this one over here which is pollinated, and I think it's coming along nicely. It's starting to turn green, so we should have some more baby mad rags for you guys. Every time this plant throws out a leaf, it's probably going to make it to the favorites list. So yeah, you can tell why. It's magnificent. It is just so gorgeous. The final plant on this list is this one right here, my king Anthurium, my Anthurium VEITCHII. Now, typically, I like to show you guys plants on my favorite video when the leaves are hardened off. But the reason I'm showing you this plant is because we have two leaves. They're not hardened off. They're still very, very, very soft. And I need to be really careful whilst handling them. But this is the first time I've had this plant, and it's thrown out two leaves at the same time. I have been trying to fertilize my plants more regularly, so maybe a diluted fertilizer once a week, or just a full dose once every 2 weeks, if that makes any sense. So I have just upped it. Before I used to only fertilize maybe once a month at a diluted rate, but I make sure that I still give a full dosage for that month or for whatever's recommended on the label, but I can maybe split that up over the month. So instead of giving them one full dose once a month. I might do it twice a month, or just break it down into quarters. So that means that the plant always has access to nutrients, and I think that's what's contributing to the fact that this plant is throwing out 2 beautiful leaves. Now I can tell that these leaves are going to be slightly larger because I think it has more ripples and more abs than the previous leaf, which is exciting to see. I can't wait until this thing sizes up. I did have this right up against my east facing window. It needs to get blasted with morning sun, but now I have it actually sitting on top of my grow shelf, my grow tent, sorry, just here. So it's getting a little bit less light, but anthuriums are not highlight plants, so hopefully this will give the plant the exact and perfect amount of light and temperature that it needs to be successful. Like with my other anthuriums, you can see that I've got this dressed with some sphagnum moss just on the top here, just to maintain that humidity around the top of the plant. And just like with my queen anthurium, hoping that this layer of extra moss, which will promote the humidity, will just help the plant to maintain a steady growth rate, because I found that was really benefiting my Anthurium warocreanum. So yeah, so just like the queen, I'm going to try to do the same with the king over here and just keep it growing and keep it happy. Now, this plant, I didn't expect it to be such a sprawler. Look at that. The leaves are literally spreading out like crazy. So I may have to start to find a way just to, yeah, support the leaves to stay upright, because otherwise it takes up a lot of room. I really do just prefer plants that grow upright, like climbers, as opposed to sprawlers, because they just take up more floor space, and that's what's really valuable in my space anyway. I have ceiling space for days. It's just the floor space where another plant could be sitting beside it and it can't. So yeah, I just need to think about how I do that going forward. I do see signs that we may have some inflorescence soon, but I'm not too sure if I'm just reading into this too much. So I'm going to show you guys over here. So just here where my finger is, you can see there's a bit of a whiter patch just here along the leaf. Now with anthuriums, this is where the new flower would emerge. So you usually have new leaves grow from this central point right here, and then each leaf you would have the inflorescence emerge from the leaf itself. So just like over here, this is where it will come from. And I'm seeing that there's a little something, a little activity, a little bit of a whiter patch. It looks a little bit pregnant. So hopefully we may have an inflorescence to play with. It's going to be the first one, so I'm not hopeful that it will produce, it will be sort of fertile or anything like that. I find the first one usually doesn't work. It doesn't, sometimes it just dies, the plant aborts it, but hopefully it does, and I can maybe play around with doing some really cool hybrids with this king anthurium. But yes, this is it. This is the final plant on my favorites video for September 2022. Drop a comment below to let me know what your top 3 plants are at the moment. I know it's an ever-changing and evolving list, so I'm more than happy to keep the conversation going for as long as possible. But that was it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.